We just had the 2021 version of Dell Technologies World, and you really have to be living under an IT rock not to have heard the word Apex. Now, to be fair, there were lots of other announcements. There was the cloud console, there was storage as a service, there was stuff on Flex on Demand, there was talk about DP, and so on and so forth. But frankly, those things were all either part of Apex, or pretty soon the conversation came back to that. I'm joined by three smart colleagues to give their succinct, immediate reactions to Apex and everything else that went on as briefly as they can. First amongst them, I'm going to turn to Scott Sinclair because Scott, obviously one of the key new announcements alongside Apex overall was storage as a service. So your thoughts?
Well, Mark, with Apex, Dell Technologies looks to be all in on managed services this year. I mean, they actually had two flavors. There's storage as a service or Apex Data Storage Services. And they also had Apex Cloud Services. And I'm a huge fan of this move. IT has gotten so complex that more and more organizations are actually trying to get out of the business of managing infrastructure. And now Dell can actually help them do that. We also saw Dell at the event focusing on the right things. They actually focused on things modern organizations actually care about. For example, they focused on Apex's deployment and management experience. They highlighted their commitment to 14 days or less for new deployments and 5 days or less to scale the environment, claims I'm actually confident Dell can deliver on, given their success with global logistics and services. All in all, it's just a smart move by Dell.
Okay, but there was a lot more too. And for this, I'm going to turn to you, Mr. Bowker. From the cloud perspective, there was talk on the cloud platform. There was the partnership with Equinix. Obviously, we've got the issues with VMware and the spinning on, in, out, whatever going on as well. So what did you hear more from the cloud platform side of things?
Yeah, I mean, a few things there, Mark. So one is, let's be honest here, right? There's a little bit of an elephant in the room is Dell is late here, right? They've talked about Apex for a while. And as Scott mentioned, they're offering some great services around it. When I think of Apex, I think of how does that consumption model ultimately fit into other cloud initiatives. So whether it's a cloud native design and architecture that is 100% hyperscaler driven, or more frequently what we're seeing is a architecture that involves cloud native services, potentially services, as Scott mentioned, from Apex, and potentially service from partners like Equinix. So I think that was a super important partnership to mention. And it gave really a head nod towards all the infrastructure isn't going to be in somebody's data center. It's really going to be a mix of what we call distributed cloud, where it is a mix of cloud services, on-prem infrastructure, and co-location type of facilities, interconnection from its partners to develop the kind of applications of the future. What I call kind of this developer-ready infrastructure. Dell has to focus on that a little bit more, what it means to IT ops, and also has to think about bringing in things like microservices, because the world isn't all about just containers. There's other architectures they need to be aware of as well.
You mentioned late. I know Dell would say, well, you know, they might be late to the party, but they're a heck of a big entrance to the party, which is probably true. But none of that, I think, Kevin, you would agree, none of that's going to work unless the partners are on board and really able to function well. So what did you hear from that side of things that either scares you or gives you confidence about this play?
Thanks, Mark. I thought that Dell did a good job of educating partners as to the opportunity for them to leverage their expertise in vertical markets and applications and services and deployment and a variety of things. But it also raised a couple of questions in terms of how well and how quickly it's going to be adopted and pushed by the partners. And you know, the next critical phase is really how Dell will enable those partners to blend those existing skills and capabilities and adapt and change their business models. If you think about what a win-win is going to look like over the next few years, it's the ability to tie partner economic models and business models that are going to match the transformation rates and the way customers are going to buy into and adapt their businesses to Apex.
I want to thank you all for your comments. I want to close with sort of one question. We'll do it as a Brady Bunch. How good? Marks out of 10. How strongly do you see the future, obviously from a competitive viewpoint, as well as all the emphasis Dell is going to put on this? Maybe I'll go in the different order from floor. Kevin, you first.
I think there's a high likelihood. I'm not going to give it a 10 out of 10, but the strength and the breadth and the depth of the Dell portfolio, and more importantly, the investment by the ecosystem, means that those partners are going to try to find out a way to make it work and make it work for both them and their customers.
All right, Scott, you?
You know, I think this is going to be, won or lost, or the score will ultimately result by how effective Dell is at that go-to-market and executing through their sales team, through their partners. I agree with Kevin. I give them high marks there. So, if it's not a 10, it's fairly close. And also in the comments that, Mark had about being late, I think Dell may be a little late, but I think they're closer to fashionably late than actually late to this party, because I think there's a lot left to be written. And again, I think it's all back to that execution. I give them high marks.
All right, Mr. Bowker?
Yeah, I think it depends on how their customers perceive them, meaning what's the unit of measurement. I don't believe that the unit of measurement anymore inside of IT is a server or storage or networking. I don't believe the unit of measurement is anymore a virtual machine. I even challenge the fact that if a container is the unit of measurement. So I think they have to certainly look to take existing, I'll say, VMware footprint and see what they can do and how they can melt that into Apex and possibly turn in things like Tanzu to support container management. But I think they also have to look critically at partnerships like Red Hat, for example. How can they look at something like OpenShift? How do they really embrace that to say, okay, I want to be able to take Kubernetes and containers, turn it into a managed service, and really become a peak part of that ecosystem. So it all really comes down to me is how do their customers view the next level of unit of IT going in the future?
All right. Well, thank you all. I think what's very clear to me is, if nothing else, we know that Dell is all in on Apex. I think we'll know whether this has been successful truly in a year or two from now, because I tell you, we won't be using both words. It'll either just be Apex and Dell will have gone away, or we'll just say Dell because we won't need to talk about Apex anymore. That's how serious we know it is about this play, and that's how we'll really tell whether it's been a genuine success. Thanks to all three of you. Thank you for watching.